Hello, and welcome to Lessons Learned from Successful Large-Scale Transformations. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Elizabeth Moon, and I'm a Director of Solutions Architecture here at AWS. I'll be joined shortly by Customer Executive Jana Golodryga from Phillips 66. Our discussion today will focus on practical, real-world advice for large-scale adoption of cloud and digital transformation. We'll talk about common business drivers, how successful enterprises are setting inspiring goals for their organization, the effect that culture can have on the overall cloud journey, and critically, how to remove barriers and plan for that successful migration. We'll also spend time on the people and how to enable your organization to be ready for the cloud adoption. I'm really excited to introduce Jana Golodryga, Senior Vice President and Chief Digital and Administrative Officer for Phillips 66. Jana comes to us with more than 30 years of experience within the oil and gas industry, including leadership roles at Hess Corporation, BHP Billiton, and Marathon Oil. Jana, let's get started. Thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us a little about your journey with Phillips 66 and how Phillips 66 is using the AWS cloud today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Elizabeth. I look forward to the conversation. So I joined Phillips 66 a little over 3 years ago, and the reason I joined is because I love transformation, and this was another opportunity, perhaps my last opportunity, to transform. And so I was brought in to do digital transformation, but the reality is after a few literally weeks on the job and after spending some time talking to my peers on the executive leadership team and also other leaders in the organization, what became really clear pretty quickly that digital transformation is probably the easiest part to do. We truly have to transform the business and transform the company. And we can do that and enable that transformation by digital. So digital in this case has become an enabler to our broader transformation. And we've called our transformation program Advantage 66. And the program was started in 2017. At the end of 2017, it was actually approved November 2017. And so we're 3 years into that program of transformation. And AWS has played a huge role in taking us to the next level because everything was on premises. Clearly, big data centers didn't have any of our applications ready to go to the cloud and all of that. But the AWS team, not just the technology, has played a great role in our transformation. And it wasn't just the technology. It included as well the leadership behaviors.
That's awesome, Jana. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you've actually been here before. You've led successful large-scale transformations at more than one place. Can you tell us a little bit more about how culture sets the stage and really enables the organization for this type of change?
Sure. So clearly, I've mentioned it earlier that I like change. The minute I get comfortable, I want to do something different. So I really don't like the complacency, and I really like change. So in my previous 2 jobs, specifically at BHP Billiton as well as Hess, I have been driving change. So I love that. I love doing that, and that's why I joined Phillips 66. Now, leadership behaviors and culture play a huge role in any transformational initiatives you take upon yourselves to and with the broader organization to deliver. And one of the things that we've done, which is really interesting, when I first joined, there was a group of us, a group of leaders at Phillips 66, that we flew to Seattle and we spent some time with the Amazon leaders to understand not the technology, not necessarily what AWS can deliver, but overall the broader Amazon culture. And we were really fascinated by the leadership principles that we've all read about. And clearly there's so many articles written about it, so everyone pretty much knows them or read about them. But hearing it from the team once we visited with the team in Seattle and hearing them describe what that means for them was an eye-opening experience for us, for the team that visited. There was about 7 of us. And when we came back and we said, we have this transformational program, and we've already identified the initiatives, and it has 12 very, very large initiatives for the Advantage 66 transformation. But what became really clear to us that one of the enablers for this transformation has to be culture. We have to look at changing our culture. And so based on that, we had a team, internal team, that focused on what behaviors do we need to either change, what behaviors do we need to retain, the ones that we have now, the leadership behaviors, and what behaviors we really need to just bring in brand new ones, and what would that look like. And the outcome of this has been something that we call our energy in action. And that is our leadership behaviors. That is the how we work every day, how we bring ourselves, authentic selves to work, and how do we deliver value. So the four behaviors that we came up with, number one was work for the greater good. And that was not just work for the greater good, work for the greater good, not just necessarily greater good of our enterprise, of our corporation, but greater good of the communities where we operate and where we work and where we have big presence. So that had a lot of meaning to us. Instead of each business unit focusing on their own individual business function, greater good. Enterprise wins, everyone wins, versus my business wins, and then forget about the rest of the enterprise. That was one. The other one is create an environment of trust. And that trust can be not just, or should be not just inside of the company, as well as with our customers and suppliers. So create an environment of trust. The third one that's really, really important is seek different perspectives. So I've spent most of my career in oil and gas, and we know each other. It's kind of 2 degrees of separation, not even 7. And everyone knows each other and knows what we're doing and how we're doing it. But we were focused on, we need to bring different perspectives. This is where diversity comes in, and broader exposure to other industries and other cultures. And then the last one is achieve excellence, which is extremely important to us. We've always done things really well. We execute extremely well, and we didn't want to lose that one. So our leadership behaviors played a huge role from the cultural perspective in taking this transformational journey to the next level.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about your, leadership behaviors, and it's very similar to, as someone who works at AWS, we do use our leadership principles that you mentioned. AWS has 14 leadership principles, and we all pretty much use them every day to make decisions, to prioritize. Is that sort of how your leadership behaviors are used, really, to try and inform and create that culture of innovation that you're looking for?
Absolutely. And not only that, we're using now these leadership behaviors in our performance management, that we want specific examples from our employees where they've clearly performed against our leadership behaviors, and not against, I don't know what I'm saying, but with the leadership behaviors that we have, they're very simple. There's only 4 of them, not 14. So we tried to reduce the number, but we also wanted to make sure that they're really well understood, and our employees and contractors that are working with us clearly understand the value of each one of the behaviors. But we also want to have specific examples that people have performed and lived up to the behaviors that we expect. So this has been a phenomenal success, and I can't begin to tell you, when you talk to the employees and when something comes up, they say, well, you're not really seeking different perspectives. Or this does not sound like an environment of trust. So there's something that we need to change or do differently. The simplicity of just the 4 behaviors has been appreciated by the organization broadly, because now they believe that we can call each other out and say, okay, this was a fantastic display of the behavior, or this is something that we probably need to improve.
That's awesome to hear, and I think it works similarly here at AWS. So it's great to hear that those leadership behaviors are helping to instill that culture that's so helpful in the transformation. Now let's talk about enabling change in a highly regulated and traditional industry like oil and gas, where security and risk mitigation are really important. What were some of the key methods that you've leveraged to try and break through previous assumptions about cloud and about digital?
Well, we are a highly regulated industry, and everything starts and ends in our industry with health, safety, and environment. That is for us. We have zero tolerance. If anything that we're going to bring in as far as transformational opportunity or initiative, if it impacts safety or it impacts health of our employees and contractors or impacts the environment, we're not going to do it. And so anytime you talk about major transformational change, which we brought in major transformational change specifically into our operations, we have to take that into consideration and make sure that whatever we do, we cannot impact our safety and environment and health. So when we've started the journey of transformation, I remember I stood in front of the whole organization multiple times. And I said that I just want to make sure that we as an organization can feel liberated that this transformation is not going to impact in a negative way our safety, health, and environment, as well as our external financial reporting. Everything else is on the table. Everything else we can look and we can change and we can improve, but we will take the same risk approach to our transformational initiatives that we have as we take to our health, safety, and environment. So that was really important, and we actually have taken that approach to all of the things that we've done. So some of the examples specifically I'll give you in refining. So refining is clearly it's a very complex operation, very, very complex. And we need to ensure the environment is protected. We need to ensure our employees and contractors are protected. So safety is very important to us. And when we started talking about the transformation, some of the reservations or concerns or probably pushback that we were getting early on, we couldn't even bring mobile devices to our facilities because the view was that they're not intrinsically safe. So you really have to have that safety mindset. Another view was you're going to have this mobile device. It's going to have some applications that perhaps our operators or people in the field will spend more time, playing with the tools versus actually focusing on safety and focusing on operations. So we wanted to ensure that the mindset of the operations staff is safety, health, environment, number one priority. So how do we do it in a way that it opens up the horizon so you can bring all the new technologies, but also protect our values, if you will, from safety and environment and health. And we have been really, really successful for many different reasons. And AWS has played a huge role because we have implemented a lot of digital technologies in our refining, in our midstream operations. And by implementing these technologies in a safe, environmentally conscious kind of way, it helped our employees to feel confident and comfortable that what we're doing is not impacting the HS&E or health, safety, and environment. And that has been a huge success. And we will continue to focus on that to ensure that now, even beyond what we've done early on when we stepped in, now these technologies and automation, all that, they're taking our people, our employees and contractors out of the environmentally hazardous environments because they don't have to do certain things because it can be done automatically. It can be done virtually. It can be done to where you don't have to touch the equipment. So it has been a huge transformation.
So it sounds like really helping to lead the organization through digital and adopting cloud technologies is really helping you with achieving that overall safety and secure mission that you have. Is that right?
Absolutely. Zero tolerance.
That's awesome.
Remember, I said zero tolerance. We cannot violate, we cannot impact our safety, health, and environment. So everything else is built around that. But sometimes from the leadership perspective and to to bring the organization along the way and saying we're going to do this and this is how we look at it from the risk perspective. You just need to show some examples of success, and then it just rolls, and you have one after another now.
It's interesting you bring that up because one of the things that I often see is that sometimes folks will get really focused on understanding and analyzing every bit of information before they even start their cloud journey. And it sounds like what you're saying is you've encouraged the organization to try and get some of those early wins and build momentum. And that's really helped you with sort of accelerating the journey. I'm curious if that sounds right, if you could embellish a little bit or add to that a little bit, if it makes sense.
Well, when you start out on your journey or even thinking about it, the number one important thing from my perspective is to understand why. Why would you want to do? Why would you want to take that organization on the journey of migrating to the cloud? And a lot of times I've heard many people were saying it's all about cost. It's all about cost. We're going to save cost. And when I came in here and worked with the team, the message was very, very simple. It is not about cost. We're doing this transformation for three reasons. Number one, we want to have an agile business, so we need agility. We want to have an efficient business, and we want to have a smart business where we can truly have some smart technologies, availability to data on demand, and making smart decisions that are informed by data. And so starting point is never cost. And so that's the thing that I think is really important to keep in mind. For us, it was all about we want to have the compute power on demand. We want to have access to the unlimited compute power and unlimited data on demand. And that was really, really important. Another thing that we wanted to get in the environment to, instead of having some of the technologies just in case. So you have a primary data center, you have a secondary data center. It's just never been, the lights haven't been fully turned on in the secondary one because you only have it for the DR and for disaster recovery. And so the question is, why would you have a whole, big data center sitting there just in case versus having a solution just in time? And so cloud has given us three things. Number one, unlimited compute power. Number two is this consumption-based mindset that if you use it, you pay for it. If you don't use it, you don't have to. And then the third one, ensuring that our disaster recovery is in place and it happens just in time. So that's the approach that we have taken in the end. I think we've been very, very successful. We have quite a lot of most of our workloads now in the cloud, the ones that we deemed that we're going to move them to the cloud, because we did not want to really move some of the legacy environments that we know are going to go away. And so really focused on the future.
So it sounds like you really took a look at what could we move quickly. You started pretty aggressively down that path. You then looked at, some of the larger, bigger opportunities for innovation. And then there's also this idea of whatever we can retire, let's take the opportunity to do that. This is really a catalyst to help you do all of those. Yeah?
Absolutely. And you really need to start small because you really have to convince your organization, first and foremost, the IT organization, that this is going to liberate them to do bigger, better things versus focusing on server management and what's in the data center. So small kind of initiatives early on with the quick wins, something that gets people an opportunity to see what's possible and believe that this is actually going to work. That was really, really important. You can't just come in, do the analysis paralysis, analyze for months and months and months and months and maybe years, and then come out and say, ta-da, we're just going to do that now. You really need to get the team on the journey, and that's what we did. It took us a while, and some of it, just like you said, some of it was really quick wins, some of it was a little bit truly lift and shift, and some of it was no, we're going to have to completely take a completely different approach that is focused on applications and the workloads that we have.
Awesome. That is so interesting to hear you say this, Shana, because it's very similar. I talk to a lot of customers that tell me that they've seen, a lot of success with this exact approach that you're talking about. Get that experience early. And are you seeing that the questions that you might have gotten at the beginning of the journey around, well, why are we moving and what benefits, that those are sort of being replaced by how soon can we move? I think you mentioned you've seen some great momentum with your team.
Well, we're over 80% of our workloads are in the cloud. So the conversation about why that has been dead, pretty honest, for quite some time. And now the conversation is not necessarily when can we move, because we know we have a plan when we're going to move the next one, and it all depends on the application. But the interesting conversations now are more, look what we've done. Look how quickly we can do it. Look how, look how agile we are. Look how we can transition from one environment to another and not blink an eye. You look at what the savings that we've had, to be honest, as far as the resources and where we focus our resources. So it has been a really phenomenal, I think, experience for the organization in general. Security used to come up as a big concern. Well, wait a minute, you're not going to be secure if you're in the cloud. You're just going to have to stay on-prem because that's far more secure. What about our data? What about all of that? We don't hear that anymore. And I think this is a reflection of the organization and how our organization picked that up, the opportunity to get to the next level and run with it.
That's awesome. One of the things I heard you mention, and you've talked a lot about both the business side, it's not for you all about just an IT optimization or cost optimization exercise. It's really about improving the business ability to deliver results, right? And deliver new functionality quicker. We do find that when the business and the technology goals are in alignment, that really helps to accelerate that move to a large-scale transformation like this. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I think you mentioned there was a business case that you helped champion there that's been helpful for creating that kind of alignment across the senior leadership there?
Oh, absolutely. So clearly you do not start a massive business transformation without having a clear end in mind. Like, what do you think you're going to deliver? Another thing that's really important to keep in mind, we're not an IT company. We are a technology company. You'll be surprised in oil and gas how much technology we have. We're a company of engineers, so we build things and we move things. So this is fantastic from that perspective. But we're also very much driven by targets, and what targets do we set, and how do we hold people accountable, and how do we measure it. So I talked about our Advantage 66 transformation program that started 3 years ago, and it has 12 really big initiatives. 8 of the 12 initiatives are value-driving, value-creating initiatives. And the way we look at value is from kind of 3 different perspectives. Number 1, margin improvement. Number 2, reducing our costs. And number 3 is our capital avoidance on the capital projects that we have. If we can standardize and simplify and not gold plate, we can deliver a better solution. So 3 ways of measuring it. So we've, as part of the program, we've identified for each one of the 8 initiatives, how much value do we expect to deliver, run rate, sustainable, going forward once it's implemented. And we had a pretty large number that the team came up with. And guess what? After 3 years, in year 1, we've exceeded what we said we're going to deliver in year 1. We're in year 3, and every year, so far, the past 3 years, we've exceeded the targets that we have set for ourselves. And so this has been a phenomenal outcome. And I think it's an extraordinary effort from the organization. And it's also a reflection of the leadership behaviors in action, as well as us holding each other accountable and said, if you want this initiative to be delivered and you believe you need it, and we have a business case, and you signed up for this kind of value creation, well, we're going to hold you accountable. Different ball game, right? So, which basically your bonus program, everything else is based on that. And this has been probably one of the most rewarding parts of the transformation for me personally, to see how the organization has stepped up to what's possible. It's the whole thing about the art of the possible.
I think that's awesome. And you've really created an inspiring vision and set of goals to help drive the organization towards that overachievement. It's very exciting. So I love hearing that.
Team effort. I was blessed with some of the best people. Still am.
Awesome. And speaking of the team, one of the things I wanted to ask you about really, we see that training and enablement across your organization is something that can help, empower folks to usher in the change that you're looking to drive. Can you talk a little bit about how you transform the skills in your organization, and what are some of the best practices that you had, to help your people get ready for this change?
Well, I am a huge believer that, clearly pretty much everyone is probably, that people are our biggest asset. So if we're not going to take care of people, and if we're not going to take an approach saying that we need to get them on board with the transformation, but we also need to give them the tools and the skills to be successful. So this was one of the key objectives and guiding principle for us as part of the transformation, is to create this digital workforce of the future. And I'm not talking about just digital workforce that is focused on IT. I'm talking about the digital workforce across the whole enterprise. How do we get our refining staff to become digital? How do we get our midstream staff? How do we get our support functions like finance and HR and procurement and other groups to become digital? So this has been a key driver. We stood up something that we call Digital University, so Phillips 66 Digital University. We've laid out the job families and career maps, and what skills do we need to give our people. And honestly, we started out with my organization, my IT organization, as well as a few other organizations that I am responsible for, to show again examples of small wins. How do you start out, and how do you get the team going? But the important part of it was to ensure that people feel that they can give up what they're doing today. And my key message always has been, don't focus on the legacy. Don't focus on the present, focus on the future. And by doing what we were doing with the digital workforce of the future, we're actually giving people an opportunity to be not just productive, which they are productive today, but to give them a future to where they're honestly marketable. I don't even want to, I don't want to lose them. I don't want anyone to hire them. By the way, AWS hired a few of our people now since we've trained them. But I want them to become more marketable and feel that that's just a personal satisfaction to say, wow, my skills are so valued inside the company and outside the company. Critically important to get the team. So when we started the transformation, there was just a few of us that came from outside. And by the way, it's really hard to start a transformation in the company when you're an outsider. But once you get the team on board and you get them to believe and see what's possible, and you take away some of the purely transactional and commodity type activities and open up the horizons of what's possible, magic happens. So we have some of the most amazing people, and the skills that we're building, not just, like I said, not just in IT, but broader in the business, with all of the things that we're doing with the analytics and what we're doing in the organization. It is kind of unleashed that hunger for data and what can I do with data, and you've given me all the skills and tools. I can do it now.
That's awesome. Well, Jana, I think we're pretty much at the end of our time. I loved all the advice that you've given us today. I think a lot of the folks in the audience are probably actively, planning their migrations now based on some of these great tips. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
In closing, I wanted to highlight a few key learnings for our audience today. We see this time and again. Strong top-down support, like Jana mentioned, is critical to large-scale transformation. Creating a strong business case can help build alignment between the business and the technical side of your organization. Culture is really important in driving a successful cloud journey. I love how Jana shared the leadership principles that Phillips 66 is using as guiding force on their culture transformation. Your people are key to adopting the cloud. Investing in training and enablement broadly across the organization can also help to accelerate your journey. And finally, I loved hearing how Jana encouraged her team to start building momentum with early wins, gaining experience along the journey. We see that can be a huge accelerant in helping to get that clouded journey going quickly. If you're interested in learning more, please take a look at the resources on this page. We've recently introduced a number of workshops, including our Migration Immersion Day, that can help you get started on your cloud journey. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And please, if you could take a quick moment and fill out the survey.